What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Wrestling Junkies Podcast. I'm Mr. Cincinnati, and conspicuous by his absence is the podcast dad. He is unavailable for the first half of this doubleheader, but he will be back tonight at 8:30. Nevertheless, we continue on. Before I introduce tonight's guest, once again, welcome back to the Wrestling Junkies Podcast. If you're new to the channel, welcome. As always, hit that QR code in the top left corner. Remember to like, share, subscribe, turn those notifications on. Our goal is to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the year, and we need your help to do it. Right now, I think we're sitting at about 275, give or take. So there's still some work ahead of us, but we are confident that we can reach this goal by the end of the year. And once again, this is a labor of love, and we need your help to do it. So make sure that you are tuned in to everything that we are doing on social media. As always, make sure that you are following the Main Event Wrestling Network on X as well, and on all social media platforms. If you want great podcasts, live streaming, blogs, fan art, you name it, Main Event has it. Fantastic group of people that we work with, and we're just trying to make those main event moves around here. As always, support our merch store as well. You can see that I've got the official Wrestling Junkies hoodie on. We've got hoodies, tank tops, t-shirts, beanies, hats are on the way. I keep telling the podcast dad that, but he doesn't seem to want to listen to me, and I don't think he believes me, but it's okay. I'll prove him wrong eventually. Also, support us through the WWE Shop affiliate link. If you do need some WWE merchandise, use that QR code in the top left corner right there. Get yourself some WWE swag. Everything that we earn gets reinvested into the Wrestling Junkies podcast, so we want to make sure that you are the first to see all the brand new items that they have and to continue to help support our channel. Couple more announcements before we introduce our guests. Again, Wrestling Junkies are supporting ETU Wrestling Summer Madness 2 coming up July 27th from the Mecca in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey, one of the preeminent independent wrestling venues, and we are so proud to be a sponsor. Incredible lineup is already taking place here. We have got Marcus Mathers taking on Titus Alexander for the Key to the East Championship in the main event, and just announced yesterday, Joseph Alexander, A Game, will be in attendance as well. Cannot wait to see what he does there. And again, these will all be streaming live on IWTV. But this weekend, Scenic City Invitational taking place July 12th and 13th at TWE Chattanooga. This is going to be an incredible tournament. 16 entrants, 2 nights, 1 winner. Don't forget that we've also got the Action Futures Tournament as well. Thank you again to Cody Fluffman, Tyler Stevens, and Tim Bosby, who have been on the show. And we've got Jameson Shook that showed up yesterday as well. And before everything kicks off with SCI, TWE presents the night before. Wrestling Junkies are supporting a double main event here. Darian Bankson, and Daniel McCobb, a rematch months in the making, as well as Jaden Newman taking on Paul London. There's going to be an incredible weekend for wrestling, I should say. I'm so damn excited I can barely talk right now. But if you're there and you see this logo, show up, say hi. We'd love to see everybody that we've been interacting with over the last year plus at this point, and cannot wait to hang out and interact with all of you. Tonight, it's time to move on to our guests. We've got 2 incredible guests tonight. We have a fantastic mainstay at TWE in Chattanooga and a beloved figure in the wrestling community. Describes himself as a 5-year-old at heart and a world-class nerd, bringing a unique and playful style and spirit to the ring, competing in the upcoming Scenic City Invitational Futures Tournament presented by Action Wrestling. Please welcome the one and only Kasey Owens. Kasey, how's it going, man? How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, and welcome to the show. I believe this is your first time here.
It is. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Here at the Wrestling Junkies, we look at professional wrestling. You see superheroes, supervillains, they clash. The one thing they do have in common, though, they all have an origin story. So, Kasey, indulge our audience. Tell us about some of your earliest memories of pro wrestling.
So, my earliest actual memory of professional wrestling is watching the tag team M&M make their entrance on SmackDown. It's a very obscure thing, and I don't know why it sticks out in my memory, but it does.
I think Melina might have had something to do with that, if I can just throw that out there.
Melina, the red carpet, the paparazzi, something about it.
For sure.
But I started watching wrestling basically from the time I was born because my parents loved it. So that's my first memory, and then from there, the fandom just kept growing, especially when Jeff Hardy made his return in 2006. Kid me was sold on wrestling from that point on. Like, there was no question that that's what I loved. And then somewhere along the line, your taste in wrestling changes. So it evolved from just me just liking Jeff Hardy to there's this cool cast of characters on every show.
Yeah.
That you either love them or you hate them, but you like watching them.
So when you've seen this evolution as far as your fandom over the years, especially now that you're in the business yourself, who would you say have had the biggest influence on your in-ring style?
I think it alters the further along I go. So at first, it was a mesh of people I had seen live, just from helping out with TWE shows while I was training and going to live shows as a kid, because that's what resonated most with me, was watching it live. Like, TV was cool, but I loved watching live wrestling. And then last year, I went on a deep dive and just kind of studied William Regal and Fit Finlay and just how they went about matches and the little nuances and tricks they did that gained them an advantage.
Yeah.
So last year was a lot of that influence. This year, my influence still has some of that, but it's more gritty and I don't want to say technical because those guys are very technical, but it's a different type of technical wrestling I'm going for, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like they are two names that, when a lot of us that grew up in that Attitude Era generation, that are adults now, we look back at names especially like those, that it's just like we did not appreciate them enough when we were kids watching them, because we think William Regal, you think just kind of the stuffy British snobby aristocrat, but then when you see the comedic timing of what he's been able to do as we got older, the influence he had in NXT, and just that presence of, man, we were spoiled and didn't even know it.
Oh, 100%. And especially, I like going back and watching a lot of his later work, because that's really where his character kind of shifts a little bit. So he's not as stuffy Englishman at that point.
Yeah.
He's a mean veteran that knows all these different ways to hurt you.
Yeah, and especially given that being billed from the streets of Blackpool and having a very gritty blue-collar background, not necessarily Steve Regal, every man's man background, but a very, very street tough physical background that definitely has evolved with him over the years. But let's fast forward a little bit. Let's talk this weekend. Scenic City Invitational. You are in, I believe, the Futures Tournament. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, all right, tell me, how are you feeling? Take us through the preparation. I mean, there's a chance you're going to be in more than one match this weekend. So, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty confident about it. The preparation is more of like a mental preparation at this point. Like, my body's as ready as it's going to be, especially considering the weekend starts tomorrow with TWE the night before.
Yeah.
And my kind of scouting for this is different in that I'm one of my first round opponents, Jameson Shook, who you had on here yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm wrestling him and his tag partner Finesse. Me and Shook D are challenging for the tag titles. So I have to prepare for him twice. Plus Mackenzie Morgan, who's my other first round opponent. Plus Finesse, who's Jameson's tag team partner in that tag match. The one thing I don't think people realize about this Futures tournament and how different it is every match is a triple threat match in this tournament. And I think everybody's preparing for, I have to beat two people to win. No, you don't. You only have to beat one person. You only have to pin or submit one person.
Yeah.
So my preparation has been more, okay, if there's a point in the match where Mackenzie Morgan hits a big move or Jameson Shook hits a big move on each other, not on me.
Yeah.
If I can just slide in, dump one of them out of the ring and steal the pin, I'll do that because it's about a win at the end of the day.
For sure. I mean, that's incredibly well said, and definitely a different thought process than we've heard from our other guests this week for sure. And I think it, if I can be so bold to say, but I think you've got a little bit of a home court advantage, so to speak. I mean, this is the same building the TWE operates in, and you're a mainstay there as well. How does that factor into your preparation, knowing that not only do you know the building, inside and out, but it is almost like home court to you, just kind of looking at you in a vacuum here.
It's definitely a home court advantage as far as the location and the setting, but I don't think that advantage is specific to just me. I think that advantage is anybody who's a regular at TWE has that advantage over people that are coming in that aren't there regularly. Mm-hmm. I do think where that hurts me is the TWE crowd is not very fond of me at the moment. They love to chant Oompa Loompa at me, and sometimes that will get under my skin.
Sure.
So that crowd is going to play a big factor in this match, and I don't think that they get enough credit for how they affect the atmosphere in that building.
Gotcha. Well, so Podcast Dad and I, this will be our first trip to the TWE Arena this weekend. As a couple of newbies here, take us through what that atmosphere can be like. What is the vibe like at a TWE show, Scenic City Invitational, as a whole in Chattanooga?
Those are shows that are designed for everyone. Does not matter if you're a wrestling fan or not. Nothing matters as long as you show up, have a good time, and you make noise. Obviously within the parameters of socially acceptable and things like that. But the one thing that crowd does very well, because that's a small-ish building.
Yeah.
Like, we can pack people in there, but once you get people in there, it's a tight fit, right? That makes them 10 times louder because there's no room for all that sound to go except to you.
Yeah.
The one thing I do love about that building, the concession stand is wonderful. So please try some food while you're there. It's all good. I've tried most of it.
I'm sure the munchies will kick in.
Sir?
I said I'm sure the munchies will kick in when we're down there for sure.
Some point. If you go to a wrestling show and you don't get hungry at some point, I have questions. Yeah. But that building is very unique. It's hosted a lot of different events. SCIs, hosted Uncharted Territory. The fans in that building love and appreciate good wrestling, and they're going to get it for 3 days all weekend.
Love that. I mean, and at this point, especially because, again, you've got this presence not only in the night before tomorrow in a tag team championship match, and then obviously competing in the Futures tournament. Is there anything that you want to say to anybody that you are competing against this weekend? Everybody has been given that opportunity to do that. You are no different. The floor is yours.
I think the one thing I want everyone to know in that tournament is that at the end of the day, it's business. So I'm going to take any shortcut in that tournament I can find. So don't be shocked if, as you're going for a pin, you get a knee trundler to the side of the head. Don't be shocked if you have your back turned and I clip your knee. Because at the end of the day, it's about a win. It's about winning a tournament. I'm going to do what I have to do. And Wall is a member of the good hand with me also. Nothing but love for the Wall, but if it comes down to me or him, it's got to be me. And it's nothing against him. It would be that way with anybody else in this field.
Okay. Very well said. Before we let you go, and I thank you again for joining us and taking us through your thought process on SCI and the Futures Tournament this weekend. There's one question we do have to ask. We ask every guest this, and I think that you've probably seen it before. But Mr. WrestleMania, is it Shawn Michaels or is it The Undertaker?
It is The Undertaker. Here's why.
We were doing so well. Yeah,
we were. Here's why. I would argue that the biggest moment in WrestleMania history is the streak being broken. If there's no streak to break, that moment doesn't happen to the magnitude it does. I would also argue that the main event of WrestleMania 26, career versus streak, Undertaker and Shawn, doesn't hold the same weight if the streak isn't on the line. If it's just Shawn Michaels' career, it's still a big deal, but it's not as big of a deal without the streak.
Okay. All right. Well, I am a Shawn Michaels stan through and through, but I can certainly respect anytime anybody has an argument or justification for why they think that one or the other deserves that title. So, no, I greatly appreciate it, and I greatly appreciate your time tonight. Before we let you go, I've got it up here as far as your social media on X. Anything else as far as social media where everybody else can find you?
Instagram is the same, the Kasey Owens. I think that's it.
All right, awesome. Well, Kasey, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on tonight, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me, and can't wait to meet you in person this weekend.
Look forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Likewise, you take care, okay?
You as well.
Thanks. See ya. And again, you can catch the SCI tournament July 12th and 13th streaming live on IWTV. TWE the night before will also be on IWTV tomorrow night. But up next, we do have a special guest that wears many hats in the world of professional wrestling. He's the owner of the Wrestling Independent and a commentator for 1CW, bringing a wealth of knowledge and passion to professional wrestling. He's here to promote the upcoming event, TWI Slamfest, which includes an incredible lineup. Please welcome Mike Fresh to the show. Mike,
hey, how are you? I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So much like Kasey Owens, the question also goes to you. When we look at wrestling heroes, villains, they all have an origin story. So tell me about some of your earliest memories of pro wrestling.
I'll give you two little things. I grew up watching wrestling, but really the first thing that captured my attention was when Shawn Michaels and 1-2-3 Kid had their trio of ladder matches that they had. That's probably what made me a fan when I was younger, and that's also kind of showing my age.
That's okay. That's totally fine here. I mean, I think I threw out some references yesterday that were from 2000 that the podcast dad gave me a little bit of grief on. So totally fine. So you hear about Slamfest coming up this weekend. From what I've seen, this is an incredible show, and I've got the full flyer here. And I mean, this is just a who's who of independent wrestling right now. For those that are not familiar with the Wrestling Independent, tell us a little bit about the history of getting started.
So that actually goes back a long time. I started out 2001 with a radio show called The Wrestling Fiasco. That was back, if you were a fan in Philly, CZW was having their big shows there. Ring of Honor had just started. MLW was starting. 3PW, which was owned by the Blue Meanie. You even had XPW in there. Different people were buying the ECW arena and renting it left and right. And there was pretty much a monumental show just about every weekend in Philadelphia. Because I had a chance to be on the radio, I somehow got the opportunity to help the Blue Meanie with his helping to run some aspects of 3PW. If anybody watched 3PW, it's old. You're going to have to look for it. I'm not sure where the tapes are, but they had people like Dusty Rhodes come in. They had Todd Gordon come in, and they had all these spectacular names that also used to talk. And one of the things that I would do is I would kind of sit in the back and listen. So I got to listen to people like Dusty Rhodes talk about some of his stories, Todd Gordon talking about stuff and booking, and hearing Meanie and everybody going through this. Even people like Kevin Sullivan would come through and talk about that stuff. So a couple years ago, I started a podcast called The Wrestling Independent. I started working with 1CW down in Delaware, which is an awesome promotion. 1CW is one of my favorite promotions that I've ever seen live. And I kind of had this moment just about a year ago now where it was like, maybe it's time for me to put my money where my mouth is, because I always felt like I could do this. It was me wanting to prove it.
That makes sense. And I mean, you very clearly have, the radio background, which helps you with the commentary position that you have. How do you find the balance between being a commentator, but then also promoting your own shows?
Well, right now my shows, I'm only running about 4 a year. So it's not like I'm running every month or every other month.
Sure.
1CW, doing the commentating thing there was great because they gave me a chance to fail. They let me call matches and record them, but not use them until they thought that I was good enough to do it. I'm a very story-driven person. My regular job is I'm an English teacher, so
Nice.
I love the storylines that go through with 1CW. Because I'm a very detail-oriented person, I'm able to talk about them very well. And so for me, wrestling's all about storylines and all about what you can do with it.
I like that. And it's always, and it's also refreshing to hear, having not only the background as an educator, but specifically in English and being able to tell stories in a relatively physical manner, that you have the pen and you have the opportunity to put together these masterpieces. So let's talk about this card here a little bit as we were getting ready for today's show and looking at the flyer here, as well as the list of participants that have been advertised. Red Dog and Stan Styles stood out immediately because they are former guests and friends of the show. I just want to focus in on these two particularly. What is it that they bring to the show, and how do you see the night playing out for them this weekend?
Well, I can tell you, number one, they're actually going against each other. It's Stan Styles and Brittany Blake versus Red Dog and the Guarantee Mike Z. Red Dog is one of those people, he just can't have a bad match. I mean, he loves what he does. He knows how to pick his moments. He knows all the intricacies of everything. Stan Styles, the first time I met the guy, I thought he was completely insane. After knowing him for the past couple of years, I know that he's completely insane, but he just has this gift for how he, for his matches. He really has such a unique style and personality that he's always exciting to see. And it's kind of, he's kind of really the one guy that I let on that I trust to do the comedy stuff, because I have a very strict policy that for me, comedy wrestling doesn't work unless you're a really good wrestler, and Stan Styles is a really good wrestler.
I like it. And that's interesting because I've never really gotten any insight as to when it comes to the art of comedic wrestling, kind of what it is that you look for. So outside of just kind of that solidified in-ring know-how, what else is there that you think that should be involved if you are going to effectively present comedic wrestling to a show?
You have to treat comedy as seriously as you treat drama. You need to buy in 100% of what you do. I mean, I've seen matches where like the guys try and act like the bad guy and they're doing stuff like, oh my God, what am I doing? And like, it's to me, that's not funny. To me, you have to buy into it. And that's something Stan does very well.
Awesome. Okay. So let's take a look at the rest of this card here. So we have got O'Shea Edwards taking on Sean Carlson. I believe that Sean also has some appearances coming up with NWA, and I believe that he will be a guest on our show in the coming weeks/month. But take me through this rivalry here. These are two guys that are just making serious waves on the indies right now, and what makes this match so exciting?
Yeah, Carlson's one of my best buds. He works with 1CW as well. I believe he's part owner. Sean's one of those guys. He outworks everybody. I mean, he's literally training 4 to 6 days a week when he's not wrestling, or depending on when he's wrestling or not. Yeah. O'Shea Edwards, just a monster. This is what the kind of match that you just call a meat of a match, where these guys are just going in there. Sean Carlson loves slugging out. We're actually going to have doing tickets on sale for NWA 76 because Sean's going to be on it. So this is going to be an interesting one. Sean's kind of been sticking his nose and helping out people, and some people such as CMD and PJ Savage aren't too happy with the fact that Sean's been sticking his nose in everything.
Well, I mean, this is one that just looks like it is going to be hard hitting and just a meat fest, which we're big fans of that here on the show. Elsewhere, we have got Miles Millennium taking on Twitch. That smile on Miles right now is off-putting, I think, is the best word here. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in this program.
This match is what I like to call a thinking man's match. Not to, I'm sure if he hears this, he's gonna like tell everyone I said this. But Miles Millennium's almost like a modern day Raven with the way that he thinks. He's very thoughtful. He's very methodical. He's kind of snake-like when it comes to just kind of grabbing a submission out of nowhere. Twitch is someone that I've been trying to highlight. I mean, he took an absolute beating from Jay Sky, called him out right after the beating, and almost submitted Jay 2 seconds after he was done. For me, this is a battle of the minds. I mean, both these guys are so smart. Both these guys know how to control their opponent. So it's going to be very, not necessarily mirrored styles, but mirrored thinking going into this.
Okay. And speaking of mirrors, I can't help but notice the Batman mirror that you've got in the back there.
Yes.
That's pretty damn cool.
Everything up behind me is either Batman or it's wrestling. That's literally it.
I love it. Next up, we have here Gabby Ortiz, Adriana Mosley taking on Nahir Robles and Sofia Castillo. Women's wrestling is just on fire right now. I'm excited to hear more about these four and what they bring to the table for TWI.
Well, unfortunately, we had to change a lot of our card. We had a couple of pieces that had to move around, so that's not actually an updated card. It's actually going to be Adriana versus Nahir versus Sophia. We actually moved. Vicious Vicky had to pull out for some real world reasons, and it's going to be Gabby Ortiz versus Erica Lee, and then the other match is Adriana versus Sophia versus Nahir. Adriana, if you've never seen her, if you've never watched her, she is a big bad bruiser. I mean, she can wrestle with the best of them. She can take hits and slug with the best of them. And I think that this is going to be a test for both Nahir and Sophia. I think that, this is going to be dangerous for both of them. And I really want to see what happens when you have that, a movable object coming right after, two of probably the nicest and best wrestling girls in the company.
Awesome. Very cool. So what else do we have on the updated card?
We have CMD versus Pure Ignorance in a Philly street fight. That is actually our main event. Originally, it was going to be something else, but CMD versus Pure Ignorance, they fought at the very first Wrestling Independent in December, and CMD and Pure Ignorance actually got double disqualification for brawling outside of the ring. The last show, it was CMD versus NPJ Savage versus it was Kaz Evans, BT Windsor, and Sean Carlson. That's kind of where we got the O'Shea Edwards match from.
Okay.
So this is kind of retribution. It's, we've had a chance to go at it. We're doing it again. And this is kind of the fight to finish that right now.
Awesome. Well, I certainly cannot wait to see how all of this shakes out. Before we let you go here,
can I just name one more match just because?
Sure. Of course. Sure. Yeah. Floor's all yours.
We also, if anybody knows Kaz Evans and Jay Bougie, they've been going at it online for 2+ years. And so they are our opener for the show, but they independently came to me and they decided to put Kaz Evans locks up against Jay Bougie's BCW Grand Dragon Championship.
Okay. All right. Oh man. I mean, I know that you probably can't give a prediction, but give us your thoughts on what you think might happen in this match.
I can't see Evans losing his locks for anything. I mean, Bree Combination Wrestling up in New York was nice enough when we said we wanted to up the stakes to say that we could use the Grand Dragon Championship, since that's one of the things that Jay Bougie has really worked hard for. So this is really going to be we've been waiting to do this for 2 years. We're unleashing everything, and it's going to be even more humiliating for whoever loses.
I like it. I like it. Well, again, I cannot wait to see how this card plays out. Give everybody the information as far as tickets, if they're still available, if it's going to be streaming. Let everybody know what's going on with the show this weekend.
So, first of all of our matches, all of our shows get put up on our YouTube channel, which is the Wrestling Independent. You can always go on YouTube. It has everything from the past shows up there right now. So this will definitely be posted. And we work really hard on those. Like she's not able to come in because she has New Japan. But Veda Scott does our commentary sometimes.
Oh, awesome.
We also have Savannah Ray, who's fantastic, and Brian Murphy. And we put some pretty hard work into the production. Also, our tickets are always available at tinyurl.com/the Wrestling Independent. And we still have some front row. We have very little front row left. We still have some general. We definitely have a lot of general admission left because we usually get most of those the day of the show.
Awesome. And there is that QR code on the screen right there if you are in the area and looking for tickets. Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Before we wrap up the show and let you go, I have to ask you the same question that I asked Kasey Owens. And based on what you told me about your origin story, I think I have an idea of what the answer is going to be. But Mr. WrestleMania, is it Shawn Michaels or The Undertaker?
It's Shawn Michaels. Everyone talks about the streak. And if you've listened to any of his interviews, the person who hated the streak and the idea of the streak the most was The Undertaker. He never wanted it, never wanted that to happen. He thought it was stupid. Every year he wanted somebody to break it. So I got to go with Shawn Michaels.
I like it. I like it. A very astute take. And looks like the podcast dad and I have split the series when it comes to that debate today. But real quick, I'll put this up one more time. You can find Mike Fresh on X/Twitter at Mike Fresh TWI. You can also subscribe to the Wrestling Independent YouTube channel, help them to run those numbers up. Again, Mike, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This was an absolute pleasure, and give them hell this weekend.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Thank you. All the best. And that is going to do it for us tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. The podcast dad will be back for the second half of our doubleheader at 8:30 tonight. But in the meantime, please hit that QR code in the top left corner. Remember to like, share, subscribe, support us through WWE Shop, support our merch store, help us to run these numbers, help us to grow this community. Everything we earn, we reinvest back into pro wrestling because it is something that we absolutely love to talk about, and we love to see everything that's happening on the independent wrestling scene right now, and we need your help to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to let all of you go. We will be back at 8:30 with two more incredible guests. We have got Logan Knight as well as Pluggo from the Between Two Beards podcast, and we're just going to be talking the state of pro wrestling in 2024. Once again, I'm Mr. Cincinnati, and this has been the Wrestling Junkies Podcast.